Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. I welcome you all, warmly welcome you all to this wonderful session that we are all going to have together. Okay. And this session is on
Okay.
storytelling. I'm sure all of you, when you were young, you heard a lot of stories from your grandparents, and that you have transferred them on to your own children or younger siblings, or use them when you have been in the classroom situation. Okay. So, what is storytelling? Now, see, it's a beautiful relationship between the storyteller, the audience, and the story itself. A lovable relationship. So, the storyteller, at some times, you become a performer also, because within the same story, you start acting different parts. Okay, and why do we do this? Because we want our audience to understand. So, today, our topic is storytelling for education. So, as I said, that concepts we have to teach children, rules, and what are the basics of any subject. But sometimes they get very heavy and children don't understand. So, what do? We try to use stories. Now, within stories, we can use music, theater, you can ask someone to enact or to dance, you can have costumes, different types of voice modulations, you can use body language so that everybody understands what we are speaking. Now, in our country, we are very, very lucky because we have stories from the Mahabharata, from the Panchatantra, from Ramayana, heroes of history like Hanuman or Rani Padmavati. We know so many stories because we watch movies, we read books, and we also now have the internet. So we can use all this for education. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you two uh, picturizations, two videos, slideshows where there is a heavy concept and there is a very interesting story. So, are you all interested in watching that? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
that's extremely wonderful. So now there used to be an author. He was called H.G. Wells and he lived in England. He was born in 1866. So what this man used to do, he used to write science fiction stories and they came true in this century. He wrote a story called The War of the Worlds and the Time Machine. A war of the worlds was a battle between different planets, and we have actually seen that. There have been so many series, so it's going to happen. That he had predicted, and he died somewhere near the first when the First World War took place, so that is in living memory. H.G. Wells. He had predicted that man will find a potion. If he drinks it, he will become invisible. So let's have a look. This little story, it's known as Footprints Without Feet. And the book which he wrote, H.G. Wells wrote, it is known as The Invisible Man. Okay, so let's get on with it. You're allowed to ask questions while the session is going on. You're allowed to have a lot of fun because if we have fun, then we can understand what we are trying to teach our children. All right. You're allowed to laugh, you're allowed to crack jokes. We are part of one huge session, so we are a family together. All right, should we go for it?
Yes.
So many years
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. Many years ago, that means at the beginning of the 1900s, there was a scientist and he was known as Griffin in England. Now, he was a very bad natured man, criminal bent of mind. But he was so clever that he found a potion that if you drink it, you will become invisible. You, me, anyone who comes to know about it. So what happened was that he never had any money to pay his rent. So the landlord came and told him that, look, please leave my premises, otherwise I am going to ask you to leave. So he got so angry that he set fire to his landlord's house. Griffin. Griffin sets fire to his landlord's home. Now the police are after him. So what does he do? He drinks that potion and then he becomes invisible. But he had to remove all his clothes. Otherwise, people could see him. Now it was winter time in London. You know how cold that gets. So he forgot about so many things. But yet he kept running away from that scene because police people have dogs. And then he found some clothes. He put them on, but he realized his face was invisible. So people would get to know there is somebody there. He kept walking. And then there was a group of young people standing. They kept looking in horror that there were footprints which were walking in the sand. They kept walking, and they were wondering, what's this? Is it a ghost? But what Griffin did, he started running and he ran inside one departmental store in London. And then what happened then? Excuse me. It was closing time. So he waited for the whole staff to go. The store was locked. He went and slept on the mattresses. And then he had something to eat from their food court. And soon it became morning and he heard the staff coming back. Now he didn't know what to do because he had already stolen some clothes and he had worn them. The staff found him and so he ran out of the departmental store and again he took out his clothes. Meanwhile, he had carried some clothes with him. So he put them on and he bandaged his face. And he caught a train, and the train, he took it out of London to a place called Newcastle. And then he looked for a room in an inn because he wanted to continue his science studies. Now the landlady, she asked him, why have you got bandages on your face? So he said, I'd hurt myself. But she gives him the room. Then soon he runs out of money. So there is a clergyman, that is a person who looks after the church. And everyone knows that the church has a lot of donations, so there is money inside the house. So one fine day, Griffin, again, he has to remove his clothes. He goes to the clergyman's house. He steals money from his study room. The clergyman and his wife come down shouting, who is there in the study? Is it the devil? Come on, give up. But then they have a look around the whole of the study and there's nobody there. So Griffin goes back to the inn and yes, can you hear? Is
Yes,
everybody
ma'am.
able to hear?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So he goes back to the inn and he gives the landlady the rent.
तो वो कुछ गई तेरा खुल दी उसको
Hello? I excuse
We are
me.
getting disturbance, ma'am. Someone is speaking, I think, background.
Can I request you all to please mute yourselves? Put yourselves on mute, otherwise we find it difficult that the other people want to hear. Okay? Okay, thank you.
बात रात को मुझे 160 के ऊपर बुखार आ रहा है थर्मामीटर से रनिंग होती है सुबह से
Somebody, can you please put yourselves on mute? Let me see.
टक्कर करने का
Can you please put yourself on mute, my dear?
सानिया मैम प्लीज म्यूट सानिया मैम प्लीज आप म्यूट कीजिए
Yes, thank you so much.
सॉरी मैम सॉरी
Don't worry. No, don't worry about it. Sometimes it happens with me also. Okay, so he goes to the landlady of the inn and he gives her the money. Now, meanwhile, when he is in his room, the landlady comes in and she sees him removing his bandages. So she thinks it's the devil himself. So she starts screaming and he throws a chair at her because by that time he has again disrobed. And she goes down the stairs saying that there is the devil has entered my home. Meanwhile, someone rings up the police that there is something strange going on inside the inn. Now the innkeeper's wife is frightened to death when she sees that this man, when he removed his clothes, he became invisible. Now constable arrives there. Constable is like our havaldars, police people. and he has a hand-to-hand fight with Griffin. Now, Griffin is such a strong man. He kicks and shoves and boxes and he does all sorts of things, and the constable falls down unconscious. And after that, the crowd tries to catch this invisible man, but they cannot because they don't know where he is hiding in the crowd. And he pushes everyone and he runs out of there. So this story we can tell our children that, see, in future there are science fiction which have been predicted 100 years ago and they still might come true. Now this is the story of H.G. Wells. It was in a chapter in the 10th standard book. It was called Footprints Without Feet, and the whole book itself is known as The Invisible Man. So did you folks enjoy this story? Did you
Yes,
ladies
ma'am.
like this story?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Interesting.
Okay, I'm so completely happy to hear that. Really, really very happy. So see, when we are teaching children, we have to keep in mind that they are younger than us. Their level of educational evolution is much, much smaller because they're still a few or maybe 2 decades younger than us. So we have to relate to them in the language or in the kind of uh, histrionics. You know, sometimes we act. We show them all sorts of crazy actions to make them understand what we are saying. And then we also use some tools when we come to know that the child has understood what we are talking, right? Now, what are these tools? On the virtual platform, there are something known as Seesaw, Padlet. There is one website called the TED Talks, which you can use to ask them to listen to good English. Now you can tell the student, look, today I've told you a story, but you make a quiz out of it. So that the students, they work in groups, they make a quiz, they come back, they ask each other, and you know that your student has understood what you're trying to teach them, right? We teachers, we just don't teach, close our books and go away. We make sure that the students can act out that chapter, or whether they can ask us questions if they are using their intelligence. Now, why do we use storytelling? Because the retention power of students is much, much higher when we tell stories. 7 parts of the brain are active. When we write on the board and they're copying in their books, that is also important. But they don't retain it unless they by heart it and they keep on and on studying it. So using stories as a medium for explaining in education is extremely, extremely important. All right, I want to welcome all of you who have joined us very recently. Thank you very much for joining my session, and I'm very happy to be with you. All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome, Anjali. Welcome. You have the same name as me. So I'm sure that all Anjalis might be quite great people. What do you all say to that? Okay, wonderful. So now, should we have up to 10 minutes after 6. In this story which just went by, do you have any questions, all of you, before we start the next concept and the next story? I'll be very happy to interact with you. Think about it. You don't have to worry whether this question is intellectual. Is it something that people might laugh at? You are your own person. We are learning here, okay? I will learn from you and you can learn from whatever I'm speaking. Is there anything you want to discuss? You might wonder how more than 100 years ago, H.G. Wells, he got this idea of science fiction. That's just a matter of interest.
Fiction means is, ma'am, fiction means imaginary, or are they going to be real in future?
No, fiction is imaginary.
Imaginary, na?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
imaginary. So
Yes.
what science fiction he wrote, it came true. So he had some idea about what's happening right now and what the universe is going to reveal to us after many centuries. Because he put some a formula together. He put some studies and research together, and he did it. So he was not famous only for science fiction. H.G. Wells, he was famous for writing biographies of great world leaders of that time. Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler. He wrote about them. He went and met them. Now, authors, they do these things. They go into dangerous areas and they write books. Why? Only for the benefit of the reading public, for us, the future generations which comes, right? So
Yes,
you are at liberty to use any stories printed, because once it's printed, it becomes public property. But
yes,
we
ma'am.
give credit. If we take somebody's story, we say this story belongs to, say, Arundhati Roy. Now we have such prolific writers in our own country right now. Supposing now there's so many international schools and you are teaching students who come from Britain. Okay, now we have to relate to them, right? So they understand what we say. So a little bit of studies on voice and accent, removal of mother tongue influence, British accent, it will help us so that the students understand. Ultimately, we teachers, the only reason we live is to teach, to make our students blossom and reach a higher level of knowledge and intelligence, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Most of the time we work, upgrade ourselves so that the students also get the benefit of it. Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you all ready for our next story? Yes?
Yes,
Oh,
ready, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
Ready
Definitely.
for the next. Ready for the next story now.
Fantastic, fantastic. So right now, there is a lot of talk going on about saving the environment, environmental damage, right? Because
Okay.
we
Yes.
have got factories in the world where they produce such a lot of weapons and ships and tanks and all sorts of things that they release carbon monoxide in the air, and the ozone layer which surrounds the earth, it has depleted. Means the rays of the sun, they hit the earth in a much harsher way, and the earth is heating up. Icebergs are drying up, the level of the sea is going up, and then there are tsunamis, there are earthquakes, because human beings have removed deposits, petroleum, raw petroleum from the earth, and so there are huge tunnels which crack and they go down, and there are earthquakes. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have to again request you if you all can mute yourselves, please. So let's have a look at this story. Environment. It's on saving the environment. Now, this story is written by Mrs. Sudha Murthy. She is a writer of children books. Okay. And she has written a beautiful story to show us how we can save our environment. Okay. So this story is known as the Island of Statues. See, when you're narrating a story, your students are going to definitely ask you a lot of questions. So we do a little bit of research on why has human being destroyed planet Earth? Why have they behaved in such a way? It's only to get rich, but the future generations are going to suffer. Okay, so the Island of Statues, let's go for it. Now, about 100 years ago, off the coast of India, somewhere close to Gujarat, there was an island nation. And it was ruled by a Maharaja who was good looking, very arrogant. He had a huge ego about himself. He would not take advice from anyone. He was completely egocentric. And why was that? That was because his island nation had huge deposits of marble, unimaginable deposits. And Therefore, there were many sculptors who used to teach sculpting on marble. Students used to come from the mainland of India. They used to stay there. They used to learn how to make statues, fountains, furniture, colosseums, all sorts of frescoes. And so naturally, the island nation was very rich because these students not only did they learn, but they were like modern day tourists. They used to eat in the eateries, they used to entertain themselves, they used to shop. And so the island nation was economically very strong. And that's why the Maharaja, he had a huge ego about himself. Now, one day, what happened was the marble deposits of the island nation started running out. So the head sculptor, who was a very good man, looked at the Maharaja's palace, completely made of marble. The sculptor, he went and told the Maharaja, please, can I talk to you? He said, the marble is getting over. We will have no economic activity. Let's find some other way of earning money. So the Maharaja asked him to leave. Now, this is a little spoof. There's a tiger and there's the cub. So that's the Maharaja and the cub who is the sculptor. Very soon, all the marble got over, and then the sculptor started teaching sculpting on wood. Now, the kind sculptor, he did not use living trees. He used trees which had broken, which had got uprooted or which were washed down by the river. So they started teaching on wood. Again, he told the Maharaja, ask the students to get their own logs of wood from the mainland. But the Maharaja said no. All the trees were cut down within a span of 10 years, and the island nation, it started facing drought. There was no rainfall, it dried up, people became poor, they went to the mainland to work. So then the sculptor went to the Maharaja because he was a good man and he loved his country. He told Maharaja, I will initiate a project, but you will have to raise a loan for it. We will plant millions of trees and get water from the mainland, saplings, labor, good soil. And the Maharaja said yes. So millions of trees were planted, and when 4 to 5 years, when the trees are able to survive on their own without watering, because the roots have gone down into the soil, and it was an island nation, so there was a lot of water in the soil itself. They became big, the trees, and soon prosperity returned to the land. There was rainfall, waterfalls, lakes, water bodies, farming, and the people of the land were very, very happy and celebrated. All right, so would one of you like to read out the teachings from this story very quickly? There are only 7, 8 of them. Come on.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Yes, please, come on. Sorry.
Let's look at our learnings from this story. The sculpture, love for his craft, country, and the earth. We are
Immeasurable. That means he loved
immeasurable.
it. Yes, good.
Yeah. We should not destroy the natural resources of the land and cause pain to the Mother Earth. There is irreparable damage done to the Mother Earth. Human greed manifested through the Maharaja in this story. Negligence leads to drought, destruction, and destitution. As you sow, you reap. Let's put in remedial measures.
Very nice. Very good reading. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, it is such a pleasure to meet you, ladies. You can contact me anytime. Anything else that you wish to ask me, I'll be most happy to do it. All right, so we just have a little bit of a time limit. The screen might suddenly go blank. Welcome, welcome to all our friends who have joined us recently. Thank you for joining my session. And so if there are any kind of questions, please be free to ask. We just have a few minutes to go. So the 2 stories we took today, one was environmental damage and one was science fiction. So you can even create your own stories. personal experiences, miracle stories. So many times we travel, nobody has been to, doing things that you have done on your own while you're traveling. That's been your private experience. Share it with people. So you all have been such a wonderful audience. I feel so happy that I got a chance to meet you. I hope to see
Thank you,
you
ma'am.
soon again. And I hope that you'll continuously go on using stories as and when you evolve as teachers.
We would definitely like to meet
We'll
you again,
definitely
ma'am.
do that, ma'am.
My pleasure
Yes.
anytime.
Yes, ma'am.
Any
We'd
kind
like
of
to listen to you
interaction.
again. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so
We'd
much.
like to listen you again.
Sure, I'm hoping to do one session every month, and the next one I've been asked to do communication skills. So I'll be so happy to see all of you
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Sure,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes,
and
ma'am. We
Sure,
will
possibly
ma'am.
do.
get through to all of
Happy.
you. Thank
Yes,
you
ma'am.
so much. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Vijay
ma'am.
Kumar Devrajan,
Thank
for
you so
joining
much,
us.
ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I
Thank
will
you so
see
much,
you
ma'am.
soon
Thank you,
again.
ma'am.
You're
Thank you so much.
welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Vijayji. Thank you for coming on to the
Thank
session.
you, ma'am.
All of you, hope to see you again.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Sure.
ma'am.
Yes, sure, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Enjoy your evening. And do send me any kind of feedback, questions, conversation you want to have. I'll be so happy to see you.
Yes, ma'am. We will definitely.
I'll see you again next month.
Okay, ma'am.
Meet you
Okay.
soon, ma'am.
Yes.
Meet you
Yes, ma'am.
soon.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Pretty soon. That's the spirit. Wonderful. So God bless. And I